Chapter 28. Summer passed by. The Stirling clan, with the insignificant exception of cousin Georgiana, had tacitly agreed to follow Uncle James's example and look upon Valancy as one dead. To be sure, Valancy had an unquiet, ghostly habit of recurring resurrections when she and Barney clattered through Deerwood and out to the port in that unspeakable car. Valancy, bareheaded with stars in her eyes. Barney, bareheaded, smoking his pipe. But shaved. Always shaved now, if any of them had noticed it. They even had the audacity to go into Uncle Benjamin's store to buy groceries. Twice, Uncle Benjamin ignored them. Was not Valancy one of the dead? Well, Snaith had never existed. But the third time, he told Barney he was a scoundrel who should be hung for luring an unfortunate, weak-minded girl away from her home and friends. Barney's one straight eyebrow went up. "I have made her happy," he said coolly, "and she was miserable with her friends. So that's that." Uncle Benjamin stared. It had never occurred to him that women had to be, or ought to be, made happy. You pup," he said. "Why be so unoriginal?" queried Barney amiably. "Anybody could call me a pup. Why not think of something worthy of the Stirlings? Besides, I'm not a pup. I'm really quite a middle-aged dog. 35, if you're interested in knowing." Uncle Benjamin remembered just in time that Valancy was dead. He turned his back on Barney. Valancy was happy, gloriously and entirely so. She seemed to be living in a wonderful house of life, and every day opened a new, mysterious room. It was in a world which had nothing in common with the one she had left behind. A world where time was not, which was young with immortal youth, where there was neither past nor future, but only the present. She surrendered herself utterly to the charm of it. The absolute freedom of it all was unbelievable. They could do exactly as they liked. No Mrs. Grundy, no traditions, no relatives or in-laws. Peace, perfect peace, with loved ones far away, as Barney quoted shamelessly. Valancy had gone home once and got her cushions, and cousin Georgiana had given her one of her famous candlewick spreads of most elaborate design. "For your spare room bed, dear," she said. "But I haven't got any spare room," said Valancy. Cousin Georgiana looked horrified. A house without a spare room was monstrous to her. "But it's a lovely spread," said Valancy with a kiss, "and I'm so glad to have it. I'll put it on my own bed. Barney's old patchwork quilt is getting ragged." "I don't see how you can be contented to live up back," sighed cousin Georgiana. "It's so out of the world." "Contented?" Valancy laughed. What was the use of trying to explain to cousin Georgiana? "It is," she agreed, "most gloriously and entirely out of the world." "And you are really happy, dear?" asked cousin Georgiana wistfully. "I really am," said Valancy gravely, her eyes dancing. "Marriage is such a serious thing," sighed cousin Georgiana. "When it's going to last long," agreed Valancy. Cousin Georgiana did not understand this at all. But it worried her, and she lay awake at nights wondering what Valancy meant by it. Valancy loved her blue castle and was completely satisfied with it. The big living room had 3 windows, all commanding exquisite views of exquisite Mistawis. The one in the end of the room was an oriel window, which Tom McMurray, Barney explained, had got out of some little old up-back church that had been sold. It faced the west, and when the sunsets flooded it, Valancy's whole being knelt in prayer as if in some great cathedral. The new moons always looked down through it. The lower pine boughs swayed about the top of it, and all through the nights the soft, dim silver of the lake dreamed through it. There was a stone fireplace on the other side. No desecrating gas imitation, but a real fireplace where you could burn real logs. with a big grizzly bearskin on the floor before it, and beside it, a hideous red plush sofa of Tom McMurray's regime. But its ugliness was hidden by silver gray timber wolfskins, and Valancy's cushions made it gay and comfortable. In a corner, a nice, tall, lazy old clock ticked. The right kind of a clock. One that did not hurry the hours away, but ticked them off deliberately. It was the jolliest looking old clock. A fat, corpulent clock, with a great round man's face painted on it, the hands stretching out of its nose, and the hours encircling it like a halo. There was a big glass case of stuffed owls and several deer heads, likewise of Tom McMurray's vintage. Some comfortable old chairs that asked to be sat upon. A squat little chair with a cushion was prescriptively Banjo's. If anybody else dared sit on it, Banjo glared him out of it with his topaz-hued, black-ringed eyes. Banjo had an adorable habit of hanging over the back of it, trying to catch his own tail, losing his temper because he couldn't catch it, giving it a fierce bite for spite when he did catch it, yowling malignantly with pain. Barney and Valancy laughed at him until they ached. But it was good luck they loved. They were both agreed that good luck was so lovable that he practically amounted to an obsession. One side of the wall was lined with rough, homemade bookshelves filled with books, and between the two side windows hung an old mirror in a faded gilt frame, with fat cupids gamboling in the panel over the glass. A mirror, Valancy thought, that must be like the fabled mirror into which Venus had once looked, and which thereafter reflected as beautiful every woman who looked into it. Valancy thought she was almost pretty in that mirror, but that may have been because she had shingled her hair. This was before the day of bobs, and was regarded as a wild, unheard-of proceeding, unless you had typhoid. When Mrs. Frederick heard of it, she almost decided to erase Valancy's name from the family Bible. Barney cut the hair, square off at the back of Valancy's neck, bringing it down in a short black fringe over her forehead. It gave a meaning and a purpose to her little three-cornered face that it never had possessed before. Even her nose ceased to irritate her. Her eyes were bright, and her sallow skin had cleared to the hue of creamy ivory. The old family joke had come true. She was really fat at last. Anyway, no longer skinny. Valancy might never be beautiful, but she was of the type that looks its best in the woods. Elfin, mocking, alluring. Her heart bothered her very little. When an attack threatened, she was generally able to head it off with Dr. Trent's prescription. The only bad one she had was one night when she was temporarily out of medicine. And it was a bad one. For the time being, Valancy realized keenly that death was actually waiting to pounce on her any moment. But the rest of the time, she would not, did not, let herself remember it at all. Chapter 29. Valancy toiled not, neither did she spin. There was really very little work to do. She cooked their meals on a coal-oil stove, performing all her little domestic rites carefully and exultingly, and they ate out on the veranda that almost overhung the lake. Before them lay Mistawis, like a scene out of some fairy tale of old time, and Barney smiling his twisted, enigmatical smile at her across the table. "What a view old Tom picked out when he built this shack," Barney would say exultantly. Supper was the meal Valancy liked best. The faint laughter of winds was always about them, and the colors of Mistawis, imperial and spiritual, under the changing clouds, were something that cannot be expressed in mere words. Shadows, too, clustering in the pines until the wind shook them out and pursued them over Mistawis. They lay all day along the shores, threaded by ferns and wild blossoms. They stole around the headlands in the glow of the sunset until twilight wove them all into one great web of dusk. The cats, with their wise, innocent little faces, would sit on the veranda railing and eat the tidbits Barney flung them. And how good everything tasted. Valancy, amid all the romance of Mistawi's, never forgot that men had stomachs. Barney paid her no end of compliments on her cooking. After all, he admitted, there's something to be said for square meals. I've mostly got along by boiling 2 or 3 dozen eggs hard at once and eating a few when I got hungry, with a slice of bacon once in a while and a jorum of tea. Valancy poured tea out of Barney's little battered old pewter teapot of incredible age. She had not even a set of dishes, only Barney's mismatched chipped bits, and a dear, big, pobby old jug of robin's egg blue. After the meal was over, they would sit there and talk for hours, or sit and say nothing in all the languages of the world, Barney pulling away at his pipe, Valancy dreaming idly and deliciously, gazing at the far-off hills beyond Mistawi's, where the spires of firs came out against the sunset. The moonlight would begin to silver the Mistawi's dusk. Bats would begin to swoop darkly against the pale western gold. The little waterfall that came down on the high bank not far away would, by some whim of the wildwood gods, begin to look like a wonderful white woman beckoning through the spicy, fragrant evergreens. And Leander would begin to chuckle diabolically on the mainland shore. How sweet it was to sit there and do nothing in the beautiful silence, with Barney at the other side of the table, smoking. There were plenty of other islands in sight, though none were near enough to be troublesome as neighbors. There was one little group of islets far off to the west, which they called the Fortunate Isles. At sunrise, they looked like a cluster of emeralds, at sunset like a cluster of amethysts. They were too small for houses, but the lights on the larger islands would bloom out all over the lake, and bonfires would be lighted on their shores, streaming up into the wood shadows and throwing great blood-red ribbons over the waters. Music would drift to them alluringly from boats here and there, or from the verandas on the big house of the millionaire on the biggest island. Would you like a house like that, Moonlight? Barney asked once, waving his hand at it. He had taken to calling her Moonlight, and Valancy loved it. No, said Valancy, who had once dreamed of a mountain castle 10 times the size of the rich man's cottage, and now pitied the poor inhabitants of palaces. No, it's too elegant. I would have to carry it with me everywhere I went, on my back like a snail. It would own me, possess me, body and soul. I like a house I can love and cuddle and boss, just like ours here. I don't envy Hamilton Gossard, the finest summer residence in Canada. It is magnificent, but it isn't my blue castle. Away down at the far end of the lake, they got every night a glimpse of a big continental train rushing through a clearing. Valancy liked to watch its lighted windows flash by and wonder who was on it and what hopes and fears it carried. She also amused herself by picturing Barney and herself going to the dances and dinners in the houses on the islands, but she did not want to go in reality. Once they did go to a masquerade dance in the pavilion at one of the hotels up the lake, and had a glorious evening, but slipped away in their canoe before unmasking time, back to the Blue Castle. It was lovely, but I don't want to go again, said Valancy. So many hours a day, Barney shut himself up in Bluebeard's chamber. Valancy never saw the inside of it. From the smells that filtered through at times, she concluded he must be conducting chemical experiments, or counterfeiting money. Valancy supposed there must be smelly processes in making counterfeit money. But she did not trouble herself about it. She had no desire to peer into the locked chambers of Barney's house of life. His past and his future concerned her not. Only this rapturous present. Nothing else mattered. Once he went away and stayed away 2 days and nights. He had asked Valancy if she would be afraid to stay alone, and she had said she would not. He never told her where he had been. She was not afraid to be alone, but she was horribly lonely. The sweetest sound she had ever heard was Lady Jane's clatter through the woods when Barney returned, and then his signal whistle from the shore. She ran down to the landing rock to greet him, to nestle herself into his eager arms. They did seem eager. "Have you missed me, Moonlight?" Barney was whispering. "It seems 100 years since you went away," said Valancy. "I won't leave you again." "You must," protested Valancy, "if you want to. I'd be miserable if I thought you wanted to go and didn't because of me. I want you to feel perfectly free." Barney laughed, a little cynically. "There is no such thing as freedom on earth," he said. "Only different kinds of bondages, and comparative bondages. You think you are free now because you've escaped from a peculiarly unbearable kind of bondage. But are you? You love me. That's a bondage. Who said or wrote that the prison unto which we doom ourselves no prison is?" asked Valancy dreamily, clinging to his arm as they climbed up the rock steps. "Ah, now you have it," said Barney. "That's all the freedom we can hope for. The freedom to choose our prison." But Moonlight, he stopped at the door of the blue castle and looked about him, at the glorious lake, the great shadowy woods, the bonfires, the twinkling lights. "Moonlight, I'm glad to be home again. When I came down through the woods and saw my home lights, mine, gleaming out under the old pines, something I'd never seen before, oh, girl, I was glad. Glad." But in spite of Barney's doctrine of bondage, Valancy thought they were splendidly free. It was amazing to be able to sit up half the night and look at the moon if you wanted to be late for meals if you wanted to. She who had always been rebuked so sharply by her mother and so reproachfully by Cousin Stickles if she were 1 minute late. Dawdle over meals as long as you wanted to. Leave your crusts if you wanted to. Not come home at all for meals if you wanted to. Sit on a sun-warm rock and paddle your bare feet in the hot sand if you wanted to. Just sit and do nothing in the beautiful silence if you wanted to. In short, do any fool thing you wanted to whenever the notion took you. If that wasn't freedom, what was? Thank you for spending this time with me here on She Reads Tales. Today's chapters remind us that the most meaningful journeys are measured not by how far we travel, but by how deeply we allow ourselves to grow along the way. Valancy's story continues to unfold with grace, warmth, and quiet wisdom, inviting us to treasure every moment we spend beside her. In our next episode, we'll continue with chapters 30, 31, and 32, as this remarkable journey carries us even closer to its unforgettable conclusion. If today's episode brought a little peace to your day, I'd truly appreciate it if you left a like, subscribed to She Reads Tales, and shared your favorite scene or reflection in the comments below. Your kindness and encouragement help this wonderful community continue to grow, allowing more readers and listeners around the world to discover these timeless stories. Until next time, take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in episode 15.